Our national ritual humiliation continued this week. First it was trans strippers on the White House lawn. And now, this. The Hill ran a lackluster headline yesterday. The Hill's article is so light on facts that you'd be forgiven for even thinking anything unusual happened at all, beyond some recreational drug addict's lost stash being found near the White House. With Secret Service agents overreacting and, briefly, clearing the residence in an abundance of caution. Compare and contrast the Hill's delicate, whitewashed headline with this much better and more informative one, from the UK's Daily Mail. Ha ha. The highest office. I'm glad to be independent from 'em, but I have deep affection and admiration for our British cousins, especially for their dry wit. In case you missed it, on Sunday night, an unidentified person found a plasticine envelope containing a fine white powder in the White House. The Secret Service promptly and properly cleared the building and brought in hazmat, in what turned out to be an unnecessary and humiliating evacuation of the nation's most iconic building and seat of power, since the white powder was actually just somebody's leftover cocaine stash. Somebody who has so much cocaine they didn't even notice they left their spare inventory behind. Left behind in the White House, where Hunter had just recently been avoiding process service, residing, for the prior 2 weeks, before leaving Friday for Camp David with his enabler, the former vice president. Unlike the Hill, which misinformed its readers that the cocaine was found near the White House, suggesting somebody threw it over the fence or something, the Daily Mail included a very helpful infographic, pinpointing exactly where the abandoned party supplies were found. Right on the residence's ground floor, in a non-public area right where Hunter likes to work on his laptop. Well, Hunter works, if downloading Romanian upskirt videos counts. It does take some effort, after all. You can imagine the hilarity that must have ensued when the Biden arrived at Camp David. Now, where did I leave my? Dang it. I know it was around here somewhere. Dard. It was a real-life game of Clue. Hunter Biden with the cocaine in the library. Anyway, all reports are sure that a crack squad of highly motivated political spin experts, the authorities, are presently tracking down where the illegal drugs came from. Drugs that, if connected to him, could potentially violate Hunter's new pre-trial diversion agreement, plea deal, and probation even before they ever got started. In other words, don't hold your breath to find out. Sarcastic punters online helpfully pointed out that the White House library is under 24/7 video surveillance, so it should be super easy to figure out who done it. Easy, that is, unless there is another Jeffrey Epstein-style camera failure or something. You never know. These things aren't perfect. Finally, I'm not even going to pointlessly observe how differently corporate media would be reporting this story if it were a Trump administration in the residence instead of a Biden administration. And you guys thought I was joking whenever I called Ukraine the deep state's crack house. I can't wait to find out what's next. The Missouri v. Biden case delivered another magnificent win yesterday when the judge entered a most remarkable blockbuster order, entered on Independence Day, when federal courts are closed. Make of that what you will. Here's how the state-affiliated Washington Post headlined the story. Ha ha. The sub-headline explained the decision will upend years of efforts to enhance coordination between government and social media companies. As if that were a bad thing. At least they're admitting it happened now. The decision will upend years of efforts, all right. efforts to censor Americans on social media. To remind you, I have often called Missouri v. Biden the most important civil rights case in our generation, our version of Brown versus Board of Education or something. In the case, several state attorneys general sued the Biden administration and a long list of deplorable administration officials over their systematic social media censorship. The case has already uncovered tons of significant details explaining exactly how the censorship scheme worked, such as through Facebook's private web portal giving government censors the convenient ability to put folks in directly social media jail, do not pass, go, without having to bother reporting anything. Discovery in the case also revealed the massive extent of cooperation between social media companies and government actors involving dozens of agencies and hundreds or thousands of federal employees. But yesterday, the government's gravy train derailed in Louisiana, spilling hazardous misinformation all over the tracks. After spending a year wisely developing the evidence, the state's attorneys had moved for an injunction against the government's censorship machine. Litigation ensued, and yesterday the judge entered its remarkable order granting the injunction and forbidding the government from working with social media companies except in 3 limited cases: national security, criminal matters and deliberate elections interference. In his 155-page opinion, the judge wrote that the state attorneys general had produced evidence of a massive effort by defendants, from the White House to federal agencies, to suppress speech based on its content. Effective immediately, the government and social media companies may no longer enforce information litmus tests on anything other than those limited areas, such as in the case of scientific orthodoxy. They can no longer be official arbiters of what is deemed information or disinformation related to, say, a pandemic virus. The order also forbids the government from working with so-called academic groups that have been colluding with federal officials to suppress conservative speech. So, of course, the Washington Post thinks it's the worst thing ever. It quoted cherry-picked Stanford Law School assistant professor, Evelyn Douek, who darkly warned, "The injunction is strikingly broad and clearly intended to chill any kind of contact between government actors and social media platforms." Duh. Silly professor. The Constitution forbids the government from chilling citizens' speech, not the other way around. Read it again. There's obviously a lot in the 155-page order, and to be honest, I haven't finished reading it yet. I can't imagine how long it took the judge to write this book-length judgment. But it was clear from the get-go, from the other Supreme Court cases he cited, that the judge was not impressed with the government's argument they are protecting the public from the bad ideas of stay-at-home moms and school board critics. The principal function of free speech under the United States system of government is to invite dispute. It may indeed best serve its high purpose when it induces a condition of unrest, creates dissatisfaction with conditions as they are, or even stirs people to anger. Texas versus Johnson. Freedom of speech and press is the indispensable condition of nearly every other form of freedom. This is an only preliminary injunction, and will end when the case ends. But it's still important. In order to grant an injunction, the court must find that the plaintiffs are substantially likely to win the case. So in that sense, the court is strongly hinting that, based on what he's seen so far, he is likely to find that the Biden administration violated Americans' First Amendment guarantees. Men think in herds. It will be seen that they go mad in herds, while they only recover their senses slowly, and one by one. Charles Mackay, Extraordinary Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds, 1841. You're not going to believe this headline from Science Insider, a science.org publication, but it actually happened. Now, to be perfectly fair, the article does its damnedest to claim that vaccine-induced long COVID injuries seem very rare, and probably happen less often than virus-induced long COVID. I don't agree with or believe this analysis, and think it was only included to evade journalistic censorship. Apart from those lame attempts to reassure nervous jab takers, here's what Science Insider said about the safest and most effective vaccines in history. All vaccines, those targeting the coronavirus, can cause side effects in some people, including rare cases of abnormal blood clotting and heart inflammation. Another apparent complication, a debilitating suite of symptoms that resembles long COVID, has been more elusive, its link to vaccination unclear, and its diagnostic features ill-defined. But in recent months, what some call long vax has gained wider acceptance among doctors and scientists, and some are now working to better understand and treat its symptoms. You see one or two patients and you wonder if it's a coincidence, said Anne-Louise Oaklander, a neurologist and researcher at Harvard Medical School. But by the time you've seen 10, 20, she continued, trailing off. Where there's smoke, there's fire. Researchers and clinicians are increasingly finding some alignment with known medical conditions. One is small fiber neuropathy, a condition, Dr. Oaklander studies, in which nerve damage can cause tingling or electric shock-like sensations, burning pain, and blood circulation problems. The second is a more nebulous syndrome, with symptoms sometimes triggered by small fiber neuropathy, called postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, POTS. It can involve muscle weakness, swings in heart rate and blood pressure, fatigue, and brain fog. Post-vaccination illness is a long, relentless disease, said Lawrence Papera, an infectious disease specialist at Columbia University. The article even coined a catchy new term for the symptoms, long vax. Just think about how significant it is they're finally putting a name on it. Science Insider speculated, don't cough up your coffee, that the injuries might be caused by the spike protein, which the jabs force people's cells to keep on making for months and months. Or longer. If only anyone could have known. Science Insider ruefully admitted that, so far, there are no known treatments to help those suffering from long vax. There's no magic vaccine for that. The article reported promising early anecdotes about plasma exchange, where people's blood is washed outside their bodies and then squirted back in, which showed initial improvements in patients, but then they recently returned with worsening symptoms. Is it perhaps time for a new Operation Warp Speed? Don't count on it. The researchers, who were 100% sure the jabs were safe and effective, are baffled. Maybe the long vax came back after blood washing because patients' cells were still making spike. Don't ask me. I'm just a lawyer, not a nanobiological weapons engineer. Still, the fact the article appeared at all, and in an orthodox publication, is progress. In related news, Steve Kirsch says the tide is turning. Finally, to kick off your short week with more encouraging news, consider this headline from Hollywood in toto. Despite being shown on a fraction of national theater screens than other movies starting this week, and lacking CGI effects or any massive marketing budget, The Sound of Freedom blew out the competition and has taken the top slot this week for an opening movie. Oddly, Rotten Tomatoes has buried the film. For some reason. Anyway, It's terrific news for trafficked children. And congratulations to the C&C Army for doing its part to help make this critically important movie a financial success. Have a wonderful Wednesday. I'll see you back here tomorrow to catch up on a canal-blocking container ship of breaking news.